evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Creators Room. With generous support from our sponsor, NJM Insurance, we are back with another virtual panel. I'm Danielle Reuters, the Senior Manager of Arts Education Programming and Performances, and one of the creators to this panel called the Creators Room, along with Renee Velez Torres. Before I introduce the panelists, here are some housekeeping notes. Please use the Q&A box to ask questions. If you are enjoying the panel, don't hesitate to use the chat. And also for tonight's panel, it highlights one of our long-running programs, the Wells Fargo Jazz for Teens program. Tonight's moderator is an arts education advocate, professor, and the director of jazz instruction for Jazz for Teens, Mark Gross. You most likely have seen Mark on Broadway's Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. Mark, please join the virtual stage. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here with you tonight on this wonderful program. And I want to, before we even get into it, I want to say to you, congratulations on creating such a space for artists to come together and share collectively experiences and advice and insight on what they think, how art has affected them in the ways that it has. And so kudos to you for creating this, the Creators Room. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being the moderator for this evening. And I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you. Well, you know, I love to talk. You give me a microphone and a Zoom screen.
You're the perfect guest moderator for this, so that's why you're here.
Absolutely. But tonight I will do less talking because we have a wonderful panel of people, and I'm gonna let them do most of the talking. I'm just gonna be the traffic controller, so to speak. And with that being said, I'm going to invite them to join me here. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do it in tiers, in that I'll do it from the youngest to the oldest. I guess if I'm saying that, I should have went last. But the youngest to the oldest in terms of their leaving the NJPAC Arts Ed program, specifically, as Danielle said, the Wells Fargo Jazz for Teens. But by no way does that mean or diminish their accomplishments. I think they all have wonderful and promising careers in the arts and jazz and beyond. With that being said, I'm going to start with one of the most recent graduates of the Jazz for Teens program. He's now a graduate of my alma mater, Berklee College of Music, Mr. Ricky Prasad Jr. I'm going to ask him to join us. Yes, sir. We're going to get into some wonderful conversations with him. He's been a part of the Grammy organization, I'll say. Even when he was a student at Berklee, he was involved in that, and he's now involved in it on a different level as an artist and a Grammy nominee. So we're going to get into that conversation a little bit. I'm also going to ask to join us Liani Mateo, great bassist. And I should also mention Ricky is a wonderful guitarist, songwriter, vocalist, but we'll talk about that as well. Liani, as I mentioned, is a wonderful bassist. Go ahead, Ricky. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm not a Grammy nominee yet.
Okay,
one of these days I will.
You know what? Don't take it back. Just say, yeah. Just say yes. We're working on that. Yes, because you know we're going to keep that in the ethos. Absolutely. And joining you, I'm sure, will be the bassist graduate of the Michigan State University, where she studied with one of my good buddies, the great Rodney Whitaker. And we're going to talk about Liani's what she's currently doing. She's also associated with Berklee because she's got her master's degree from Berklee. And also up in Boston, since we're still up in this New England area, a graduate of Harvard University, Marcus Miller. Not to be confused with the bassist Marcus Miller. This is Marcus G. Miller, and the G stands for geometry. And we're going to get into that in a moment. So Marcus, please join us virtually as well. Marcus is an amazing alto saxophonist. Marcus is probably reprogramming this whole platform right now, and is gonna be broadcasting simulcast somewhere else. Also joining us is one of my dear friends, fellow saxophonist, wonderful professor, band leader, Mr. Wayne Escofrey. Yeah, Mr. Escofrey is also up in the New England area in that he is now professor of the music program at Yale, up in the Ivy League. That's why he wore his turtleneck tonight. He's got the Ivy League look, which I love. But an amazing, accomplished saxophonist, composer, Grammy Award winner. He leads his own band. He's been a part of so many legendary bands, and we'll talk more with him about that. So what I'll do, and I see Marcus's screen has frozen for a moment, so he'll be joining us in a moment. I'll also mention that who was also supposed to join us tonight, but due to prior obligations was unable to be here with us, and that's the great vibraphonist, band leader, educator, Mr. Stefan Harris. Mr. Stefan Harris is now running the program over at Rutgers Newark, where he's the assistant professor for their arts and culture and media program there. And he's also the artistic advisor for what binds all of us here, in that we've all been a part of the Wells Fargo Jazz for Teens program for many, many years. And with that being said, I'm going to start with, again, I guess, the youngest, but yet not the youngest in terms of having been performing. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ricky Prasad. I remember, and you can share a little bit about this, when you came to us, you were already running your own band. You must have been about 13 or 14 years old when you were in Jazz for Teens. And I remember you were doing concerts of your own locally and abroad, and you were recording your own music. What I know your parents were musicians, but I'm curious as to, at such a young age, what inspired you to see beyond what I was doing at 13 and 14, which was just playing my saxophone and then going outside roller skating?
I mean, my family is so musical that our living room is literally a band room. So it was kind of hard to stay away from music growing up in my house. And it was just to the point for where, like, instead of playing toys and stuff, I would be playing a guitar. My brother would be playing the bass, and then my mother would be on the drums. And that's kind of why I was into the whole music scene at such a young age, especially with having my own band at that point.
Did you feel like this was something directed from your parents' perspective, or you had a love for it even at that age?
Well, my mother was denied piano lessons when she was a girl, so she made sure that when she had her own kids, that she would smother them with as many instruments as she possibly can. And that's basically why we play as many instruments as we can.
So was guitar your first instrument?
No, it was actually drums.
Ah, see, I never knew that. Okay. At what point did you switch to guitar?
It was like, so I started drums when I was 5, but I picked up the guitar around when I was 12. So I already like passed through the bass, the keyboard.
So you were an old head by the time you got to guitar.
Yeah, it's strange. I know a lot of people are shocked by that because a lot of people associate guitar with me, but yeah.
You still play drums?
Yes, I'm actually playing drums for this upcoming Carnegie Hall gig.
Well, not the spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. We're
Sorry.
going to get to that. No. That's great. We're going to get to that because, again, the intention that I want to share with our viewing audience, again, audience, the whole intention of tonight is to kind of bring you behind the scenes of the different perspectives of an artist's life, particularly those who are here, because the commonality that we all share is that with being associated with the Jazz for Teens program, but it's mushroomed into many, many facets. And as Ricky just mentioned, as you can hear, they've gone on and are going on to doing wonderful, wonderful things that we're certainly proud of. But we're going to definitely talk a little bit more about the Carnegie Hall. But before you got to Carnegie Hall, you were this little lad coming into 24 Rector Street with your guitar. And I remember at the time, you seemed a bit shy and you seemed a bit timid about wanting to really showcase the passion that was kind of under. It was like an onion, like had to peel back the layers to get to the juiciness, to the fruit of it. Am I correct in saying that? And if so, talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I was very shy, and I had like the worst stage fright at that point in my life. And I don't know why, because I perform all the time, but I was still very shy and reserved. But going to NGPAC, meeting like-minded people really brought me out of my shell, because I realized that I wasn't alone with my love for music. And NG Pack really changed my perspective on all music and just who I am as a person.
What years were you at NJ Pack?
Oh man, I believe I started at NG Pack around 2015. No, maybe before that, maybe 2014. I can't remember. It was such a long time
It
ago.
was a while ago. Yeah, yeah.
But it was a
yeah,
good 5 years I was at NG Pack, and
yeah,
it was some of the best years of my life, to be absolutely
yeah.
honest.
Well, I can't say that you're wrong in that, but I would say probably equally was your experience at Berkeley.
Mm,
I recall I went up there once to hear a concert of you all, because often we've had many students to go on to many different schools, but again, with that being my alma mater, I have a close affinity with Berkeley. And I saw a concert and I looked on the stage and I just was like, he's there. He's like no, really. And I felt like you felt so confident and comfortable, and you just brought so much passion to what you were doing on stage. Talk to me or talk to us a little bit about your experience in Boston at Berkeley.
it was really, really cool in the very beginning. There's so many gigging opportunities. It's like, I was literally every weekend, I was doing something with one band, doing with another, because that community is so, is so cool. And it just, one of my favorite things about Boston and Berkeley in general is that there's so many different genres being played at the same time. Like I never thought in a million years that I can go study reggae
Yeah,
in a
how about it?
professional level.
Yeah,
But I did it. I did that at Berkeley. And that's one of the most beautiful things about Berkeley is that it's so diverse with its people, its culture, and the music. And that's what's one of my favorite parts about the whole experience.
right. You talk about the diversity of the music, and I'm glad you brought that up. I want to bring Mr. Ascafri in on this conversation in a moment. No, now, because again, I'll talk a little bit more about the bio of Mr. Scarfrey. Just know that he's that guy. He's a bad dude. Um, I think if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Scarfrey, Ricky was in one of your ensembles, if I'm
He
not
was.
mistaken,
He
and
was.
you found a way to incorporate his passion for reggae music in one of the songs and performances that you all performed. Can you share a little, because only because Ricky, you were talking about how that is being such a passion for you in terms of a different genre of the art form. Mr. Scoffrey, you saw that and you figured out how to bring him into that.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to take any credit for that, so to speak. But and to be honest, I don't even remember the exact arrangement. But what I do remember, first of all, hi Ricky, how you doing, man? Long
Doing
time.
good. I'm doing good, man.
A long time. So yeah, he was in my combo, and or my ensemble, and I do remember that he had such a natural ability and a natural understanding of just the blues and soul. And a lot of times, now, that was kind of early on in my career as an educator, so to speak. And now it's even more apparent that those are the hardest things to teach. It's a lot easier to teach people theory and how to go from A to B, but you can't teach the blues. You can't teach how to groove and how to swing and how to have passion. He had that. And so honestly, it was pretty easy to incorporate that element into the music because it was just so natural for him. So I don't remember the specific arrangement, maybe he does, but I do remember that I couldn't ignore that, so I had to figure out a way to make it a part of what was happening.
Yeah, it's hard to deny when you see true passion and the love for it. You want to, not only as the artist, but again, as the educator, you want to try to forward that, give as much to that as you can. And Ricky, you have embraced it now to the point where you're going to be a graduate this year, right? Like,
Yes, I literally just graduated last semester, and it's crazy to think that it's over because it went by so fast.
yeah. 4 years go fast.
Yeah.
In retrospect. Yeah. But congratulations. We're going to get back to you in a moment. Now let's go up to Michigan. Let's go up to where Liani Mateo, incredible bassist, a graduate of Michigan State University, also having a master's degree, also from Berkeley. Great bassist, was up in Michigan. What was coming from Berkeley? coming from NJ Pack, going up to Michigan, what did that feel like for you? Do you think, will you tell us, what did that feel like to you? In whatever way. You're coming
Yeah.
from Newark, New Jersey. Now you're up here and you're in college and
Yeah. Yes. That. Yeah, it was in a personal way. It was very different growing up in a big city. I mean, I'm from Jersey City, and it's one of the most diverse cities in the country. And, most of my friends, I'm a first generation college student and first generation American. And most of my friends who I grew up with are the same way. And then going kind of to the American Midwest, I was a very big culture shock in a lot of ways. But I was really lucky because of my mentor, Rodney Whitaker, who really helped me navigate these spaces. And also NJ Pack did too. I mean, they took me to, these galas where there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And I really learned how to communicate a lot of these feelings in a eloquent way, I think. And I learned that a lot. And I learned that a lot from, you, Mr. Gross, definitely Mr. Escoffery. And I think NJ Pack also prepped me a lot for kind of the college experience, because Saturdays 9 to 5 was
a long day.
Fury, was Big Band. It was a long day. So, and that was my favorite part of the week. So now that having that be 5 days out of my week, it was a really, really great way to transition. Yeah, I think that.
What were some of the challenges you thought you faced up at Michigan? And I'll say that because I asked that question because I know for me, when I got to Berkeley, I felt like, oh my God, I was just overwhelmed with so many different musicians being there and trying to find my footing. What were some of your challenges or some of your thoughts in that respect?
I think for me, the biggest part was just like maybe the personal, just experience of going to college. Like I said, I'm the first person in my family to go. And it was definitely an interesting transition, kind of being in a very big institution and not really having anyone in my personal life too much that had been navigating these spaces. So that was a very interesting that for me was probably the biggest thing. And I think maybe musically was just catching up. I mean, I had really started playing an instrument later than most of the people I had gone to school with, even when I was in NJ Pack. But because it was such a safe space that the jazz program has, it gave me a lot of room to just like, well, now I don't have any responsibilities rather than just taking care of myself for the first time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And just, practicing and being able to ask questions and feeling safe for the first time. And those, well, not for the first time. NJ Pack was definitely a safe haven for me, but having it
further
be
away from home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What attracted you? Because I know you also got accepted to Oberlin, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got accepted to a few schools, but for me, I think I met Rodney when I was like 16, and he really just encouraged me. And I think we came from really similar backgrounds, and he really saw something in myself that I didn't see and sometimes still have a hard time seeing, and really invested in me so early. And so for me, there was like nowhere else I really wanted to go because of that. And not only that, the program at Michigan State is that it's very familial, there's a lot of kinship. So really just that transition, which I think would have been a lot harder in other spaces, became very easy because not only could I rely on him, I could rely on all my other faculty members that were at the school and also my peers.
Right. And to that, also I should mention to the viewers, Rodney Whitaker, the person we're talking about, is a very famous bassist. He's played with a lot of iconic people. Subsequently, himself, he's viewed in that manner. And you mentioned playing with him at school, which also led to you mentioned some of your professors, you being on the road with a lot of these people you're talking about, A.T.N. Charles, and I believe you did a couple of gigs with Carl Allen and the likes. What did that feel like?
Yeah, so that's another thing that I think is really special about Michigan State's program is the fact that because we're kind of pretty much in the middle of Michigan. All our professors live within, the campus. So there's a really big encouragement of hanging out and also just being on gigs. So I was able to travel to Japan with a jazz program, but then I also went to Senegal in West Africa with one of my professors. He took me and a graduate student, and we performed there for a week. And subsequently, because of the connections through my faculty, Carl had come to NJPAC a lot when I was in the program. And I think also having the connection of me studying with someone that he plays with a lot, that was a pretty easy transition to playing with him. And then even now, still I run into a lot of people where it's like, oh, well, so-and-so, so-and-so, either through NJPAC or maybe through Michigan State or through Berkeley Global. It's made it a lot easier to kind of have my foot in the door with some of those opportunities.
Did you feel nervous when you were on the bandstand with them?
With Carl?
Either one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when he called me, it was really funny. I was actually in Boston. I lived in Cambridge, and I was walking from Cambridge to the Berkeley building because it was the summertime, and I really liked the walk. And Rodney had called me, and he was like, "Just so you know, so and so, Carl's gonna call you for the gig." And I thought he was lying to me. I thought he was joking because he. I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever," But
right.
no, but it was definitely life changing, and to play with someone who I've looked up to for so long, and having someone to have him writing off on me and supporting me is it's definitely made a big difference since graduating.
Absolutely. And speaking of big deals and life changing events, Ricky, we mentioned just in passing, one of your upcoming events is going to be at Carnegie Hall. I remember as a kid, people say, "How do you get to Carnegie Hall?" I'm thinking this is practice. Well, you have definitely practiced. Tell us a little bit about this Carnegie Hall concert you got coming up.
So it's a Earth Day celebration along with other very talented, like-minded individuals. We're all performing and putting the show together. I'm chipping in and adding drums to the mix to help support other musicians because it's very important to support as well as people supporting you. And that's why I'm playing drums as well as playing guitar and singing. But in regards to how I got that gig, it's just networking, lots of networking with very cool people, industry people. And that's how I pretty much got that gig.
That's an important part of our business, right? Because it gets to a point where it becomes almost equally important about who you are and how you carry yourself as a person and how you communicate with others beyond just how you put the proficiency that you have on your instrument. So networking is definitely a part of that, which is why I'm glad that we have this sort of collective here of like minds networking. And I want to transition to a different kind of networking. You talked about the importance of understanding how to move things and manipulate things to get to where you want to go. And a person who has studied those formulas and has studied how to manipulate physical things as well as musical things is Marcus Miller. And I say that, and I'm probably stepping out of my shoes into bigger shoes in that Marcus, when he was a student, a student at the Jazz for Teens program, exceptional alto saxophonist. But also he had a love and a passion for mathematics, which is what brought him to Harvard University. Marcus, talk to us a little bit about that. I dare say that dual thing, because to you it's one and the same. Talk a little bit about your passion for mathematics and what brought you up to Harvard.
So it's really interesting. At the time that I was at NJPAC, probably around 2000 to 2004, I did not like mathematics. I liked mathematics as a little kid, and I had a really mean math teacher in 6th grade. 5th grade, I was like, oh yeah, let's do all this stuff. And I had a really mean math teacher in 6th grade who basically she said, I did something. I was pretty advanced in math. So she gave some problems, some homework, and I did it the advanced way that I knew how. And she's like, you didn't do this my way, it's an F. And so, okay, as a 6th grader, my attitude was like, okay, I don't like you and I don't like math. So I acted like I didn't care about math and acted like I didn't like math until sophomore year of college, actually. But the reason I ended up going to Harvard is because, I mean, probably you said it, Mark, all of my music mentors were like, look, you can already play. It does not make sense to go into debt to play this music. And your grades are good, so learn something else about the world. And all my test scores were good, my grades were good. So I'm like, all right, cool, let me apply to Harvard. So I applied to Harvard.
I just want to pause for just 1 second, because
Yeah.
to you, that's just like, yeah, let's, my grades were good, my scores were good. Yeah, so I'll apply to Harvard. That's like, that's awesome. But again, that just shows the scope of how you're thinking. But
Right.
I just had to comment.
Well, I mean, and like I said, I kicked that back because it was really the set of music mentors I had at the time who discouraged me from music school at that time. And that was definitely the right move for me. I ended up going to Harvard, and I intended to major in economics because I always wanted to be a musician. I figured if I know about the economy, then I won't be a broke musician. But I'm, studying economics, and I'm in economics 101, and it's not business. It actually doesn't. Academic economics doesn't really teach you about business or how to make money at all. It's a whole field unto itself, and a set of abstract ideas and principles from which you reason and try to make predictive statements about the world and society. Really, it's best at analyzing the past. It's not so good at analyzing the future, and we can talk about that in a moment. But I just had a good time my freshman year, to be honest with you. I goofed off, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then over the summer, I said to myself, hey, I should probably make the most out of this Harvard education, huh? So I wrote down everything I'd ever want to learn at the school. So it ranged from Norse mythology to African history to computer science and math and physics. And I realized that when I made that list, the classes that showed plurality on the spreadsheet that I made were math and physics. And, in my mind, I didn't like math anymore because I was still had that grudge against my 6th grade teacher. But I'm like, you know what? Let me just take some math classes. And I immediately fell in love with it. It was very difficult because you got to imagine that at a place like Harvard, the kids who are, the math department is full of kids who are trained in math the way we were trained in music. And I was just kind of coming in like, yeah, this is kind of fun. It's cool, right, guys? So I had a lot of catching up to do, a lot of sleepless nights. But I ended up graduating in 4 years with a degree in math, and really had a love for this, a love for the topic. I did some original research with a team at Central Michigan University, actually, between my sophomore and senior year. Decided I didn't want to be in the library for the rest of my 20s, so I didn't want to pursue a PhD. But the other thing you do when you have a math degree from Harvard is you go into finance, because they just kind of hand out finance. They just figure you're smart. So like, all right, cool, here's a finance job. And I actually got a finance job. I worked at a major hedge fund. But one of my best friends at the time had just graduated actually from Princeton, another alum named Erwin Hall.
Oh,
And yep. So he had just graduated from Princeton, and he was going full fledged in the music scene. And it was the Thanksgiving break of my senior year. He calls me up, says, Marcus, you have a gig in New York on Monday. I'm like, bro, I don't even play the saxophone anymore. I'm about to get this hedge fund money, man. What you talking about? He's like, yeah, I know. You told me that. We've had this conversation, but you have a gig in New York. Your name's on the gig. It's actually on tenor. I'm like, bro, I ain't played tenor saxophone since like junior year of high school. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I know. You told me that too, but your name's on the gig. Bring your clarinet as well. I'm like, all right. He's like, it's Monday. So I take a bus from Cambridge down to New York City to play at Minton's with Jack Jeffers' big band, playing the second tenor chair on tenor and clarinet. After that, we had this little rotation. It was 3 of us, me, my man Anthony Ware, and Erwin, and 2 of us would play the Jack Jeffers gig, and then one would play St. Nick's, the jam session they had on Monday night. Wayne, I know you know about that. So matter of fact, crazy story about that. But anyway, we would rotate. Every week, one of us would take the St. Nick, and then the other 2 would take the Jack Jeffers. And I would just be in New York until 4 a.m. We go down to Chinatown, Wo Hop. It was a Chinese food restaurant that was open until 24 hours. Then I hopped the Chinatown bus back up to Boston, walk into Real Analysis, my math class at 11 o'clock. In a suit with my horn on me. And that was my whole second semester senior year. If not for Erwin calling me that, I probably wouldn't play music today.
So let's stay there for a moment, because as you said, you're at Harvard. You're not to diminish any others. You're not at Mark Rose Community College. You're at Harvard University, right? Yeah. With all that is. You're coming down to New York. You're doing a gig. You're hanging out till 4 a.m. You hop on a bus. You go back to Boston, and you go into class. How did you manage all that? And how did you manage still being playing a musician, practicing and all that entails, and still majoring in a very, I would imagine, time demanding subject.
I wish I had a clear, coherent system for you, but it was kind of like, this is a thing I want to do, so I'm going to do it. I honestly, after my freshman year of school, I practiced a lot my freshman year, and I got real discouraged about music. And a lot of Harvard musicians will repeat this. But in my sophomore and junior year and the beginning of my senior year, I wasn't really playing much at all. And then he got me this gig, and that's the other reason I'm like, why you give me a gig, man? I don't even play the saxophone anymore. It's like, no, you got the
So
gig.
in your mind, you were done with music.
I was pretty much done. Yeah. Yeah. It might be a thing that I return to. I'm glad I got this music education so that I could appreciate the beautiful lineage of jazz music and that kind of thing. But no, I was pretty much done with it. Yeah. But then, you know, it's part of it is a competitive thing. And that's an important part of our culture. It's like, man, I'm standing on stage and my man's is cutting me. No. So I'm not going to take an L to this. No. So I would go back and, all right, well, let me just get this long tones together first off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me read something, because I haven't had to read music in several years. And so, you know, working on long tones, working on reading, and really started to develop, you know, because I wasn't in music school and because I wasn't in an environment where I was kind of told what I should be checking out or given feedback about how I needed to grow. It was the inception of a philosophy that I carried through with my playing for the rest of, you know, that's been the guiding light for my playing, is that I kind of find things that I really like and then just learn them my way. And there's a certain, within the pedagogy and within the lineage, there's a certain orthodoxy of what you're supposed to learn and why, and what you're supposed to take away and how things are supposed to be interpreted, especially when it gets down to technical things like voice leading, let's say, or double timing, or playing within certain traditions. If you're playing strict bebop, or you're playing strict New Orleans from the early part of the 20th century. And I was like, I like this Oscar Pettiford record. I like tricketism. So let me learn tricketism in all keys. I like Donna Lee. My bebop wasn't too strong. So it was a little bit after I graduated and returned to the music scene. I was like, my bebop isn't that strong. Let me just learn Donna Lee in all keys. That'll get all the languages there. So let me get that together. I also really like Frank Zappa. So let me just learn a bunch of Frank Zappa. And it was the kind of thing that kind of brought a lot of idiosyncrasy to my playing, but it was, you know, really satisfying to me as a musician, as a creative, as an artist. And that began in college, because I really didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of and to grow with. So I was really just kind of like literal kid in a candy store. But imagine that kid doesn't really have any money and the parents aren't there. So he's just kind of reaching that stuff.
Sure. And now I'm interested to hear, did you find being so well knowledged in mathematics, and, you know, as all of us are as musicians, we know what things they share, the commonalities that they share, problem solving, this, and did you find your brain thinking, well, I mean, it's your brain, so it thought how it thought. You see where I'm kind of alluding to, right?
I know what you're getting at. So if you talk about like the connection between mathematics and music, there are, knowing music in the way that I knew it did not initially help me with mathematics, nor does knowing abstract collegiate mathematics help you directly with music. It does, but you kind of have to turn a bunch of corners in order for it to make sense. The most simple way I can put it is that these are just different languages. There's a sense of problem solving. There's a discipline of being able to sit down and take the pain of having to just work through something with difficulty. There's the being used to the feeling of not knowing what the heck is going on, but just having to sit with it and grow and develop anyway. And those are common to both, but they are completely different languages. The language of the mathematics is when you do it at a theoretical or collegiate level, what it is you have axioms, and from these axioms you reason out other theorems or principles, and then you kind of build an edifice of knowledge. And what that really entails is you're learning a history, and that history for most collegiate mathematics is about 300, 400 years old. But unlike the way it works in music, where you know, if you want to learn the history, you go back to the original recordings, it actually doesn't pay to learn mathematics from Newton, right?
Sure,
you
sure,
don't go
sure.
back to
Right,
Newton's
right.
Principia. You learn it from whatever textbook. So
Right,
it's
right.
you keep current with the language, but that language doesn't really directly help with music. And in fact, lots of projects that I've seen, music theory projects that try to map modern mathematics, say topology. There's this one paper I was reading recently where this guy takes tonal centers and applies like a neo-Riemannian theory, and turns them into topological spaces and says, well, proper voice leading would mean that you don't travel a greater distance than this, that, or the third. And it's cool, and you can get some interesting diagrams, and you can like
Well, it
map like a
probably
Chopin.
sounds theoretical though.
Well, it's not really obvious how you play that, and it's not, and the people who play that, they don't necessarily sound better than the people who got it from the street, you know. So it's like, what was the benefit of this? But really, what I found that mathematics helps with, and being able to have a mathematical brain, is one, a lot of say theme and variation in composition it's the same idea as being able to move shapes around in your mind. It kind of feels the same, and you play in both worlds, and you're like, oh yes, these are very much related. There are also a lot of very interesting arithmetic tricks when you think about shaping composition and the architecture and geometry of composing. And that applies in a really subtle way that I'm actually only starting to get to and deal with heavily right now, which is how you shape a solo or something that's improvised using these kind of geometric principles. But that's that wasn't undergrad mathematics at all. That's me doing that now.
That's St. Nick's Pub's experiences and things of that nature. Speaking of St. Nick's Pub, a person who I met, I think for the first time at St. Nick's Pub, again, for our viewing audiences, there are some iconic, we call them hole in the wall. They're little iconic jazz places. The St. Nick's Pub, this is a place where Charlie Parker used to play at, almost same as up in Boston with Wally's Cafe. Each city has a place like that. I met Mr. Scoffrey in this place. Again, this is to the viewers. Wayne Escoffrey is a graduate of the Hart School of Music up in Connecticut, where he studied under one of the disciples of Charlie Parker, that being the great Jackie McLean. Mr. Escoffrey, talk to us a little bit. What was it like day one, you walk into your lesson and here's Jackie McLean?
It was terrifying. I mean, really, I had never, being around JMac was the first time that I had been around a jazz legend. I had never really had that sort of intimate connection with somebody like that. And similar to kind of Ricky and also Leone, I was pretty shy. And so it was kind of hard getting me out of my shell, and took the time. And I also actually, similar to Ricky, I had pretty serious stage fright when I was in high school and also college. So it was a long process to get me to the point where I could really open up and feel comfortable. But I was glad he was there to kind of push me through that.
What was a typical lesson like with Jackie McLean?
Well, at the Hart School, not everyone received private lessons. His lessons were group lessons. So it was, I believe, every Wednesday morning, bright and early. Literally, Hart was a small school, but because of JMac being there, it was basically like, one bass player, one drummer, and like 30 saxophone players.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, you were there with Jimmy Green and Julius Tolentino, those group of students.
Yep. Chris Allen and a lot of great saxophonists. And so we would go there in the mornings, and it would be, 20, 25 of us just in a big room with Jackie McLean in the middle and standing in the front of the room, and we play exercises together. We do our scales together. He would lecture to us. He would play us ideas. We play them back. We go around. Sometimes he'd have a bass player, one of the students or someone who graduated in the room, and that bass player would literally just be walking for 25 saxophones. And JMac would play, and then we'd answer him, and we'd all have to play a song or play a phrase. And he was literally feeding us the vocabulary, kind of like you would a baby. He was literally feeding us the vocabulary like on a weekly basis, and saying that didn't work, that doesn't work, you sound like this because you do that. You don't do this. I mean, it was pretty
So it's
amazing.
almost like an African village, and he's giving you the oral tradition of this music, as opposed
The very
to saying,
first,
here's a piece of paper.
exactly. My very first time that I had a class with Jackie McLean, it was a repertory class. It wasn't the lesson. It was a repertory class, wherein we basically just play through different tunes. That's different than the saxophone lesson. And he stood up in the middle of the class and he said, first and foremost, this music is an oral music. It's learned by ear. And he's like, that's how you learn this music. That's how I'm teaching you this music. And y'all need to put the papers away and listen. And then that was the first day. And he held true to that. And I hold true to that no matter what environment I'm in as an educator.
Yeah, almost to your point, Marcus, where you're saying, that, as much as mathematics is an important factor in this, it's a different language. It's like, you got to get this for what this is. I mean, you can imply some of those things, of course, but like, again, what you're saying, Mr. Scoffrey, I keep calling you Mr. Scoffrey because
I know, I'm like making me feel old.
I'm sorry, Wayne. You all can call me Mr. Gross. I'm good with that, Wayne. Okay, so you studied under a legendary person like Jackie McLean and others, absolutely. That brought you to New York City, the Big Apple, right? And I should also let the audience viewers know that you're really you were born in London, in the UK. You came to where did you first move? Did you move to New York, or did you move to Connecticut, or?
No, I mean, so my family's Jamaican, West Indian, and
Okay.
so a lot of my family's in
Yama.
Exactly. A lot of them are in either Jamaica or a lot of them are in the UK. And I lived a lot of different places. I grew up with just me and my mother, and we moved around a lot of places in the States, lived in Florida, Atlanta. I have a whole history before anyone even knew who I was, living all over this country. But we eventually settled in New Haven, Connecticut. And that's where I grew up, in New Haven. And then I didn't move to New York until after I graduated, after I got my master's.
Right. So let's fast forward to St. Nick's Pub. You're in St. Nick's Pub. Which I'm sure that experience was nothing new to you, in the sense of being in a jam session where Marcus talked about how, there's all of these, it's just a lot of energy going on. And it's really a great opportunity to network. We were talking about that just a moment ago. What are some of your early remembrances of being in St. Nick's Pub and the musicians you encountered?
Well, I must, in some ways, it just sounds weird, but I have to give myself credit in some ways, in that I've always sought out that environment, whether it was in New Haven or whatever city I'm in. I always wanted to be in a community of Black people playing Black music and just doing what they do. And so I did that in Connecticut, in New Haven. I found that in Boston, and I found that in New Haven, and I'm sorry, in New York. And I was lucky, like a lot of us are. I'm sure, Mark, you have a great relationship with him, the saxophonist Patience Higgins. And as soon as Patience is a master, and as soon as I don't know how I came across him, but somehow I met him because, and in fact, when I moved to Harlem, I told J Mac where I was living. He's like, "Oh, I used to hang out right there." I mean, J Mac used to hang out. This is his hood right here. I'm in Sugar Hill now. I still live right near the pub.
Yeah.
And I just went to the closest spot, that was in the hood, and I heard all the cats playing. And I met Patience, and he heard me play, and in that same tradition that I keep stumbling across, he was like, "Man, you sound great. Come over here. You need to come here all the time." He was calling me for anytime someone needed a sub. He would call me, and next thing you know, I was leading the session he got me a night at St. Nick's Pub, and he really just embraced me in that way.
Right.
And it was beautiful. I mean, cats, the thing, it's a little bit unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that St. Nick's Pub is gone.
Yeah.
And it's also unfortunate that even during its heyday, I mean, Marcus was there, a lot of these cats were there, but it's unfortunate that some cats who actually lived in the neighborhood never went to St. Nick's Pub. Some cats who lived even close to the night, they never even bothered to step foot in the pub. They didn't realize how much how important that is to this
Yeah.
music. It's more than just notes. I mean, it's about the whole culture. And the people that did come in there were actors. You know, I met Paul Mooney there sitting at the bar. I met, you know, all kind of different actors, comedians, musicians. When Marcellus would come in there, I met you there, Mark. I mean, I met Marcus there. I mean, cats were just there, and it wasn't about, you know, somebody was playing the hottest licks. It wasn't about someone had a record deal. It was about, this is where the music lives. This is where Black culture lives. So everyone that was there for that.
It's like this community of exchange and sharing of ideas, and it was the creators room before us, right?
Yeah, very important.
And it's funny because Marcus, you were thinking. I saw you thinking or saying something.
Oh man, I don't know how deep we want to get in amazing, hilarious stories about what that was, but as Wayne, as you're talking about this, I'm just recalling all these really special moments as St. Nick's Pub, but it could be a tangent. And definitely, I don't know if Leonie and Ricky, you guys didn't get to go there, so I wouldn't want to exclude.
Well, it's no exclusion, because even Ricky, you talked about it. Leonie, you talked about it in the sense of being able to exchange and network and be in an environment where you were able to meet other people. Leonie, you talked about your association with Rodney Whitaker. He introduces you. You're going to get a call from Carl Allen, blah, blah, blah. Ricky, you talked about it at Berkeley, being around like minds. So it's the same essence. I think when you brought up a good point in that, just as you sought it out wherever you went, I don't think it was kind of this physical building as opposed to more of this ideal of this is where the music is emanating from. I need to find where that is, and it could be in a St. Nick's Pub, it can be in a Wallace, it can be in a library, it can be in a whatever the case may be. So please, Marcus, share the story. I don't think it's going to resonate solely from St. Nick's Pub.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I had to, and I guess I kind of got it because I when I jumped into the scene, it wasn't from, you know, I had programs like the NJPAC and then certain other programs that have now blossomed, but were, you know, nascent when I was there. But, you know, my experience of the music as an adult was very much in the thing itself. And it's not clean, right? We talk about like ideal environments where we learn things and, you know, where there are like-minded people and everybody, you know, gets along and we're building together. And it's like, no, like like the pub had a certain kind of grit to it. There was a cat who used to just sell chicken out of Tupperware, and I'm like, oh, that looks good. People are like, nah, man, you don't know where that chicken is from, but that's happening all the time. You know, there was there were all kinds of you got all kinds of lessons about human interaction what happens late night. What is concupiscence, to use a term, right? Like, what is that energy happening while you're playing this music on stage? That's always
no one is going to say it, but what was that word again?
Concupiscence.
And what does that mean?
What are the politics of attraction late night? How does that move? What is that when you're playing this music on stage in an environment where there's lots of alcohol and other things happening? Yeah. You know, like, and how is that energy directed at you as a performer, and how do you manage that?
Right.
Maybe when they came in with somebody else, you know, like you got to think about, or like different kind of people, actors, celebrity. I remember Oludara used to come, Nas's father used to come through there, and there'd be a certain way that you know, he would interact with people, different people who are famous, and how they dealing with things. You deal with a culture, because, you know, I showed up in the 2000s, and luckily my read of the scene is that by the 90s and 2000s, a lot of cats and a lot of my mentors directly above me had gotten clean. People weren't really dealing with substances, and they were working out, and they had this kind of energy. But a lot of people in the pub came from an era where that wasn't the case, and they dealing with that. And you're watching how does that play itself out when the pub went away. A lot of people, that was their lifeblood, and there are certain people there who are now, like, you know, homeless, and they still kind of at it, and there's this deterioration. So you get this real sense of, you know, what is the real life that's going on in this music? There's the culture, and there's the beautiful part of the culture that we like to celebrate, and that is at best bottled and captured through the pedagogy and through the lineage. But being at a place like the pub, and I don't know that there are so many places that have this energy this strong, that I'm familiar with in New York. You get this sense of life, and all of that's part of the music. Like, it's like Wayne was saying, it's not just notes. You read Miles's autobiography, you read Morgan, you think about Charlie Parker, read about Quincy Jones' interaction with Charlie Parker, and you get this side of human struggle, of human suffering, not just the part that is an effect of, say, like institutional racism or something like that, but just like, what is life like? And to feel that, and to know that you're holding that when you're playing, is a really important part of the music that I feel like that I just feel the need to highlight at this particular juncture.
And highlighting that, back to you for a moment, Ricky. How have you found ways to, or not, but I would think yes. How have you found ways to use your music to address some of these things, to try to make bring light to something through your music? You mentioned your concert at Carnegie Hall, for instance. In what ways have you found purpose in your music directed in that?
Definitely through my lyrics, because the lyrics transcend messages like on a completely different level. And especially with what's happening with in the last couple of years with police brutality and all that stuff, I felt the need to get all these feelings off of my chest and talk about it within the music, because it's messages that need to be heard from, you know, people around my age. You know, people around my age, we're on TikTok, we're doing all those dances and stuff, but we gotta talk about these things, because if you don't address it, these things are gonna keep happening. And that's why using music, especially with lyrical content, not just me, but artists in general, if we use it in that sense, we can make such a big change.
And speaking of making change, a person who has toured all over the world, as we all have, but probably more than us here in this circle, Wayne Niscafri, you're getting ready to take your band back to Europe for probably the 100th time. What cities are you? First, let's talk about are you promoting a new recording? We know you've recorded several projects in the past. Is this a new project you're working on? And also, what cities and countries are you going to be visiting?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I'm leaving for Europe tomorrow with my quartet is David Kikoski, Ugonna Okegwo, and drummer Mark Whitfield Jr. I've been to Europe since the pandemic has began with another group, but this is the first time I'm bringing my quartet back. We're going to be going all over the place. We're going to be going to Lisbon, Paris, London, several cities in Germany, including Frankfurt, Munster, a couple other places. Oh, Italy, we're going to
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. Yeah, we're going to Italy, Bologna, Milan, and then when we come back, we are recording. We're recording a new album.
Beautiful.
And I should say it's somewhat, I mean, it's a thrill to do this, and it's you know, we can get into that, how much work it is putting something like that together. It's just such a lot of work, but it's a little bit bittersweet because my drummer Ralph Peterson Jr., who also actually did some work at NJPAC, he passed away almost exactly a year ago now. And you know, so but it's really a thrill to have one of his disciples, Mark Whitfield Jr., one of his really greatest students, on drums. So it's bittersweet, but I think it's a really cool, it's a cool next step that Whitfield Jr. is going to be there with me, and we're going to, you know, it's important to me that I wanted to, you know, we all have a variety of projects that we work on. We all want to change our sound and do different things, but I kind of wanted to record this band again this way with Mark instead of Ralph, just out of kind of that path in history and just continuing that kind of Ralph's legacy in some way.
Absolutely. Any idea as to when it's going to be released? I know it's early in the game. Will it be
Not
a
sure.
this year
Not
release
sure.
or next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be this year. Like maybe maybe in the spring.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the fall.
In the fall, right? Yeah. Um, Also to that, so getting back to Yale for a moment and being a professor up there, you've been in that position for the last how many years now?
5 years is my thing.
5 years, and also you've been with NJ Jazz for Teens for probably double digits at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah, like a little over 10 years maybe.
Yeah, and you're touring artist and your father. How do you manage this touring life, education life, professor life?
I don't know.
I know, I know.
I really
I asked
sometimes.
that knowing that there's no genie in the bottle answer, but
Yeah, I mean, so even lately, I've just been thinking about how busy I am, and it's a blessing that after all this craziness that I'm this busy. But it's not all just playing, you know. It's just I'm busy just doing everything, and I can. I feel like it'll never stop. But you know, I was speaking to someone about this very thing recently, and basically, it's work of passion, you know. And if you if you're doing it for a good reason, you're willing to put in the work. You know, if you're working for somebody else, all of a sudden everything hurts. All of a sudden it's a stress, and you don't want to do it. But if you're working for yourself, and if you're working for the good of you know, celebrating the music of Charles Mingus, or celebrating you know, my own music, or continuing the legacy of Rob Peterson, or playing the music of Jackie McLean. I mean, if I'm doing it for all of these reasons, you know, it's work, but
it doesn't feel like work. Yeah. I think that's the beauty that we all share, and that what we do is a true passion and love for what we do, and that's what keeps us going. And going back to Liani for a moment, you're currently touring with a what is the production that you're doing now? Is it a play or a musical, or what are you doing now, Liani?
So right now I'm on a national tour with this concert put together by IMG Artists, which is a tribute to Nina Simone, Bessie Smith, and Billie Holiday, with their respective singers like Sharnay Wade, Tahira Clayton, and Venetia Gould, Carmen Stoff being our musical director. So right now we're on our 5-day break. So I start the West Coast on Sunday.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's been really fun. We just did like kind of our Midwest East Coast run. So definitely going to a lot of places I never thought I'd go, like Iowa or Minnesota, or you know, places like that. It's been really really interesting.
Any upcoming places once you get out west that maybe some of the viewers might want to come and see you if they're there?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing like kind of Washington State, like Bellingham, Olympia. Then we're doing like the Bay Area, then LA, and then the last 2 hits are like Arizona and New Mexico. So that'll be until like I think that's until like March 28th.
And what's the name of the production again?
Bessie, Billie, and Nina.
Bessie,
so you can just
Billie,
find it.
and Nina. Right. So there you go. And to the viewers again, Liani is an amazing bass. This is just one of many things that Liani is doing. I'm going to ask our viewers if they have any questions as I continue to chat with them. Please put them in the chat, or let our founder Danielle know if you have any questions for our viewers. If not, I'm just going to keep chatting. So go back to Wayne for a moment. You've been a part, you mentioned Mingus. You've been a part of the Mingus, different iterations of that band through Sue Mingus for many years now. And I think I read something where with your ensemble up at Yale, you all did a Mingus concert, but more specifically with Mingus, this being his centennial year, is there any concerts in New York that you're going to be a part of with either Mingus's organization or your own that folks may want to know about?
Yeah, there are. Mingus was born 100 years ago this April, so April is going to be just packed full of Mingus. The big band is going to be at Birdland April 13th through the 17th, and then the big band and a few iterations like the Dynasty are going to be at Dizzy's on April 21st through the 23rd. And then actually, you mentioned the Yale Jazz Ensemble, which I direct, which is a big band. I'm actually bringing them to Dizzy's on the 26th, celebrating Mingus.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm going to have special guests Frank Lacey and Michael Philip Mossman, who worked for many years with Mingus and did some arranging too. So yeah, April. And then also we're on most Mondays at the Django these days. So yeah, it's packed. A lot of Mingus right now.
A lot of Mingus, rightfully so.
And you know, it's I'm happy to do it because you know, that's one of the first bands I joined. I joined when I came to New York, I think in 1999. And you know, you've worked with the Mingus band quite a bit. We've toured together and all over the world with the Mingus Dynasty and Big Band. And that band is really, in many ways, was a big part of my development. You know, a big part of my helping me develop my individuality. I mean, when you go in that band, all those amazing saxophonists and just musicians in general, being around those guys and girls, it pushes you to just be yourself and to just, you know, do what you do. And it's an important institution.
One of the persons I'm sure you sat next to for many years and learned a lot from, thinking of John Stubblefield, when you joined the band. I think there are persons that we encounter, and I'm sure each of us could mention one of those persons or more that have influenced us in great positive ways. What were some of the lessons you learned from sitting next to John Stubblefield? First, let's tell the audience who he was, because some may not know. And what were some of the lessons you learned from sitting around some of the older tenured masters at that point?
Well, yeah, John Stubblefield was an amazing master musician who played with everyone, including Charles Mingus. He had a very individual sound, kind of reminiscent. I wouldn't say reminiscent, but he came out of, in many ways, the tradition of, let's say, Dexter Gordon, and a lot of that you know, that soulful kind of. There's so many different influences that I can't went into his sound, but he was an amazing tenor saxophonist, composer, arranger, educator. And just a creative individual. And he was very nurturing. You know, I'm so lucky, and all of us here, I love hearing about the stories that everyone has about people that nurtured them. You know, we're lucky that we were around these positive people that inspired us. And Stubbs, we call him Stubbs, was one of those people. I mean, he was always encouraging to me, and again recommended me to Abdul Ibrahim, which is how I was in his band for a while. And the lesson I learned from John, I think, is probably so many things, but just patience, you know, just patience. I mean, if you think about it, he was such a veteran of the music and actually worked with Charles Mingus, and he was sitting there. I mean, I was playing first tenor. John played second tenor. And he wanted to play second tenor. That was his seat. But technically I played first tenor and other people played, but he was the tenor player. I was just, he was looking, you know, he's looking at us like, okay, now you playing first tenor. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm like, okay, I know exactly, you know. And so, and you know, he was there, and he was so gracious in that he would allow all these different tenor players to come up here playing, strutting our stuff. And he would sit there and he would wait a whole set for his time. And when it was his time, he'd be like, okay, now I'm going to go and do my thing. And then he would get up there and play the blues, and you'd just be like, oh, Lord have mercy. It would just be killing. I love it. And it just taught me, you know, humility and patience, and just, I don't even know. Just it's really an honor when you get a chance to be around masters of the music who are just really sure of themselves and sure of their abilities, and are gracious, and you know all about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that kind of leads into, we got a question here from one of our viewers, and I'll ask this question to all of you, and I'll ask Liani to start the round robin here. The question is, most valuable lesson, victory from your collegiate and performing experience. And I'll direct that question first to you, Liani, and then we'll just kind of go around the room. Again, most valuable lesson, victory from your collegiate and performing experience.
Yeah, I think kind of being very post-college now, because I graduated in June. I think the biggest lesson is I want to be the bass player I want to be, you know, my own favorite bass player at this point, and not maybe what school wants me to be or someone I really like wants me to be, but what does that look like for me? And who do I want to say, I want to, I want to be able to listen to me and be like, that's who, So I think that's kind of been like the lesson I've been learning lately. And victory is just, right now, just like being able to work with and hopefully continue to work with people that I really look up to and, continue to be, in the line of the lineage of this music, which is like the biggest honor I could ever ask for.
Well, you're in that line of lineage for sure, so proud of you. Same question to you, Ricky. Most valuable lesson, victory from your collegiate and performing experience.
I know from some of my colleagues that when it comes to putting together a project, you need a team. And it's very important to have a team because an artist shouldn't do everything in regards to the marketing, the producer. I mean, they can have a hand in it, but if they try to do everything, they're going to drive themselves crazy. So definitely having a team is probably one of the most useful tips I've taken in my years of being in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having a team, and I'm sure you know this, but having a team that believes in what this vision is, right? Someone that is as passionate about it as you are, because sometimes that can, Wayne talked about it just in passing in terms of putting a tour together, putting all these projects together as kind of the sole person can be exhausting sometimes to a point where you can just feel so almost mentally and physically just drained from it all. But if you got someone who can support you, if nothing but to say, come on, Ricky, let's get up, let's get back on it. We can, that's so important. So that's having a team is if you can have that is really important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, when you're starting out with your team, they don't have to be like super professionals in the industry, because you can just start out with having some of your family members chip in. Just having somebody to help take the load is very important. And I just want to make that clear. You don't have to start off with Grammy people and all that stuff. You just got to work your way up to that point.
That's right. Because that's how you get there. You got to start from where you go. I remember my dad used to always say, he says, Mark, you got to keep going because slow motion is better than no motion, And I was like, yeah, wow, that's kind of deep. So you just got to keep it moving. Marcus, most valuable lesson, victory from your collegiate and performing experience.
Let's see. 3 things. One, Nadia Boulanger quote that was relied through Quincy Jones is that a person's music is no better than the person themselves, no better and no worse. So the surest way to improve your musicianship is to improve yourself as a person. The second thing is a Bon Iver quote from his second record, which is it's a self-titled one that won the Grammy. He said, and at once I knew I was not magnificent, then I could see for miles and miles. And then the third thing is that there are stages and seasons to everything. There is, oh man, if I was going to be slick, I would have just quoted the Solomon joint from Songs, but I don't have it off the top of my head. There's a time when you got to hustle and go hard and exhaust yourself. And there's a time to pull back. There's a time to go and look deep into the minutia and detail of what's going on. There's a time to go big picture. There's a time to lead. There's a time to serve. And those are not all the same time. So there's kind of a meta skill of being able to discern what is the current in the world that you can follow and find your place in it.
I would also think that in that the part of that challenge is, like you're saying, knowing when to tune into what that time is and how you best can kind of move through that. Because sometimes for me, I don't always discern the right moment. Sometimes I'll have a moment and I'll try to push through it, and it's kind of met with resistance. And I'm thinking, I just got to keep pushing. I.e., this whole pandemic, I felt like the world was like, we just got to keep pushing. We got to keep pushing. And at points, I felt like maybe this is the time to just pause for a moment, reflect, recalibrate, and then come back to it. And I think as artists, as creatives, we don't always know when is the right. Talk a little bit more about that. How do you feel when is the right time to do those different things?
How do I do it? Well, it is a skill that I've watched. I've observed people who are a lot better at it than I am, and I kind of recognize what the sensitivity is. Developing sensitivities in general is for me a process, like a very heavy process of like meditation, and like that kind of work of understanding beyond like the sensory. But then there's also this kind of discernment of like who you are and what you're supposed to be. In my mind, for instance, and this feels relevant to musicians, and I wish somebody would have hit me to this when I was a kid. Is a difference between a craftsman and an artist, and it's not, and it's because you're actually playing different games. The game of learning as many styles of music as possible, and being able to read excellently and play a whole bunch of doubles and make a ton of different gigs is a different game than like trying to feel what the current of the universe is and bring that into reality. And to wit, craftsmen tend to be on time and dressed well, and artists, like, as I'm being stereotypical, it's not true of everyone. Artists be like, they show up when they show up, and you're just dealing with the vibe and you're just dealing with the current. And the thing that propels them may not be a superior technique or mastery over information, or even tradition, but just this intuition about what's possible. And that's really, like Wayne was saying, that's hard. Like the blues and soul and groove is hard to teach. That's also something that's kind of, you have, like, I don't want to say that you have it or you don't, because I don't believe that it's binary, but it does feel important to note that those are different games that one plays. And getting good at one game, getting good at the craftsman game doesn't make you a better artist. And oftentimes getting good at the artist game doesn't make you a better craftsman.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, very, yeah.
Yeah.
And to you, Wayne, most valuable lesson, victory from your collegiate and performing experience. You talked a little bit about it before, but.
Sure. I mean, from my collegiate experience, it's interesting. It's a little bit twofold. There's kind of two answers, and really the answer comes from failure in a lot of ways. And I don't know if I could be as articulate as everyone else in this answer, but I mean, I mentioned that I had stage fright when I was young, and it's not just the same. I had just severe stage fright. I mean, I passed out one time of playing, and I had an issue with that, and a variety of other things, and so I feel like my journey through success and mastery of the saxophone was a pretty specific and challenging one. And there were a lot of amazing musicians around me, especially when I got to the hard school, like you mentioned, Jimmy Green, a lot of these artists. And granted, all of them worked really hard, and all of them had their own obstacles, I'm sure, that I don't even know about. But from my eyes, I just felt that everyone else seemed to be getting stuff a lot faster and being able to perform and succeed a lot better than I could. And it was a really hard environment to be in. I mean, I was always encouraged, and Jack and McLean saw something in me, and he saw this special in me. He put me in the most advanced ensemble alongside some of these great musicians and said, no, you need to be up here, you're here. And it was great. It was a great push. It was also a lot of pressure, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And for better or for worse, I kind of just accepted that my path is going to be different than other people's paths. So whereas one person might be in the shed for an hour and a half and then go and be killing it, I might have to be learning the same amount of material, and it might take me about 6 hours. And that's just what it is. And so I became a bit of maybe a workaholic, and I hate that term, though, to be honest with you. I hate that term, but I just practiced a lot, not because I loved it. not because
You knew you
of any.
needed to put that work in.
I just needed to, there was no other way. I knew that I had to do that. Otherwise I wasn't gonna be at the level that I need to be. And not that I was like, I need to be better. I did want to be better for everyone else, but to be honest, I just didn't want to embarrass myself. And I just didn't want to be nervous. And I just wanted to sound good.
Right.
So, and I knew that it took me that amount of time.
Sure.
So I was just putting in a lot of hours. So part of me learned to just accept that I had my own path and I needed to do what I need to do, and to try not to be distracted by everyone else's success. And that's a lesson that I'm still struggling with, but at least I accepted it as a student to say, okay, well, so-and-so's doing that. Let me just get in the shed for 8 hours to learn this one tune.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is towards maybe around my junior year in college. You know, one of the great things about Hartford at that time when I was an undergrad studying with Jackie McLean is that there were a few clubs like City's Edge and the 880 Club where a lot of musicians would come in. And there were a lot of great musicians that came in, Johnny Griffin and you know, the list goes on, Eddie Henderson, so many amazing musicians. But Houston Person came one time. And I actually just maybe a little bit different than a lot of my friends at the time. I was actually a big fan of Houston Person because he had these duo records with Ron Carter that for some reason just captured me. And I just loved hearing those tunes. And I was just, a lot of cats didn't even know who Houston Person was. I was like, oh, Houston Person's coming, I'm gonna go. Like, who the hell is that?
Right.
So I went and actually I told a lot of cats to come, and they came, and they were just, you know, grooving with them. And Houston Person came up to me one time and he said, remember, young man, there's music, there's room in this business for everyone. And just him saying that to me in the way that he said it and who he is, and the fact that it's not like cats are running to pick up a Houston Person record to transcribe his solos. Right. You know, it's not like cats are talking about,
should, you know, but
they should, but I'm just saying it's not like if I mention Houston Person to a lot of cats right now, they'd be like, oh yeah, man, you know that record, right? You know what I mean? Right. But he is a huge success. Absolutely. And he is a master musician. Absolutely. And he was just like, just remember, bro, there's room for everybody. And just him saying that kind of added to that whole feeling that I kind of figured out myself. Like, look, man, this is my journey. I need to accept it. He kind of solidified that to me and said, look, just do your thing, man. You're gonna make your own little path, and that's gonna be your vibe.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that almost speaks to some of the stuff that all of you are saying, in that you've been inspired in ways. I think there's something healthy about competition when it's viewed in that way. Like you again, as the college student at Berkeley, there was thousands of saxophone players and triple that of drummers, right? So I was around all these musicians. And like you're saying, Wayne, once I got to a place of acceptance of where, like some of my colleagues during my tenure, one in particular was Donnie McCaslin, great saxophone. We all know who he is. Donnie was the guy who would be in the practice room practicing Paganini violin concertos and stuff. And one day I hear him practicing, and I go by his drum, and I was like, man, what are you practicing? And he showed me the music, and it looked like he took a black wet Sharpie and then just took his hand and smeared it across the page. It was like all I could see was just black notes, just all closely knit. I was like, what? And then he played it just clean. Point being is that at first I was intimidated by that, to the point where I would make sure, because we were the two who would practice 3 a.m. We had 24-hour practice rooms. I would go down in the practice area, and if I didn't hear him practicing, I said, okay, I can go practice. Now I get my horn out and I start practicing. Of course, slowly I would hear him practice. Point being, I would get intimidated from hearing persons like that. But once I got to a place like you're saying, you know, with that affirmation coming from Houston Person of just, you know, do your thing, of me being comfortable with where I am, I looked at him and thought to myself, well, wow, why don't I ask to share it with him, and he can show me some stuff and help me to evolve into where I go. And I think at some point, all of you got to that place, which has led you to all of these successes of where you are, not only in your lives, because I think music, particularly what I'm hearing from you, speaks, you know, you can tell, for me, I can gauge how a person plays from a conversation with them, how they're talking, what they're talking about, the intentions of how they're talking about things. I can see music has, or maybe it goes the other way, has influenced your lives and enriched your lives in positive ways. And the few moments we have left, I want to kind of leave us and leave our viewers on a note of where would you like to see what would your legacy be if you had to write your legacy? What would you want your legacy to be? That's a heavy question, right? Because we're all so young. I mean, you're still writing the script, but this is behind the scenes, right? Because we're always thinking about art. We're always thinking about music. Where even when we're trying not to, we can't. It just somebody could drop a pencil and we're gonna sing a song from hearing that drop, right? Or that rhythm. Or we go to a traffic light and the light's blinking. We're gonna start snapping out. What is your legacy? And yes, Ricky.
I would like my legacy to be that my music really resonates with a lot of people's hearts and souls. And I want to be known for making socially conscious music. And one of the first steps of doing that is I'm performing one of my original songs, Equality, in the Carnegie Hall gig. So it's just one of the first steps of doing that. And that's what I want my legacy to be, is being known for just positivity and really making a change through the power of music.
I love it. And what's the name of your original song again?
It is called Equality. It was released a couple years ago, but I redid it for this purpose, and it's going to be released on my new album this year, which is going to be called Goodbye Crossroads. So that should be released around the summertime. But I'll keep all of you in check with
please do. But the one that's already recorded is recorded under the title Equality.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. And next on my screen, I have Liani.
It's a real heavy question.
Yes, I got a heavy panel here.
I mean, I think from the top of my head, it's like I want to be someone who lived fearlessly, but also had compassion and loved the people around them and really valued kinship within the music. And someone who who's not going to let other people define like what they can do musically or personally. That's just something I've been thinking about a lot, because I like a lot of different music and I like a lot of way different people plays, and maybe those things don't necessarily coincide, but I would like to believe that in the years forthcoming, I can make my own path, like Mr. Scoffrey was talking about, that can be just like uniquely me and it doesn't have to look like other people's.
That's right. Yeah. And like you said, you're already writing that story. You're already writing that script. And it's more to be added for sure. And I like it. Kind of reminded me of a poem that I had to learn when I was in college, a poem called Invictus, where it ends with, you're the captain of your ship. You're the master of your own destiny. You're the one who's in control of where this is going. So I think you're doing that, in a lot of great ways. So continued success. Marcus.
Service.
Service. That's one word is. Yeah.
Is a certain point when you kind of hit all of the childhood dreams, all of the kind of checkpoints one makes for oneself, and you see what's on the other side of them, and then they become commonplace. And then for me, what some of that is done is it means that there's even the things that I want for myself in the future, I know that I'll accomplish them or I won't. But I know that there is an other side of it. And my guess is that it'll probably feel the same. Mm-hmm. The sense of accomplishment, the sense of yearning, the sense of loss, the sense of the failure and sacrifice, like that churn, that eternal cycle is what it is. And to me, after considering that and sitting with that and deeply, the thing that's left is service.
Mhm. I love that. Because I mean, you know, I'm a PK, right? I'm a preacher's kid, and even as a child, I had to grow into the understanding of what that meant. And when I was in Boston, when I was at Berkeley, I pledged to fraternity. One of our prayers is that, "Oh Lord, may the true spirit of the fraternity rule our hearts, guide our thoughts, and control our lives, so that we may become through the service to all." And that's like, I think whatever I do, whether it's playing my saxophone, whether it's going on every Saturday teaching at NJPAC and seeing the fruits of what this program is all about as I'm looking here on the screen, with my own children. I have two boys and my wife. If I can be of service, and Dr. King, it almost resonates with hearing a Dr. King sermon in the back of my mind, you know, how you use what we use the platform and what we have to be service to all. And at the end of it, I believe you talked about it before, becoming a better person, like a better, we all become enriched by our own service if it's viewed in that way of, I'm here to serve others through my music, through my art, through my educational background, through my whatever that thing is. That's great service.
If
I'm
I can
about,
add,
yep.
there are three musical references that I feel like capture this well. One is I think on Standout, Ty Tribbett's album, Standout, there's a song called Well Done,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yep.
musically, he's like probably my favorite composer alive. But he captures that. Then there's a quote from Bach where he says the purpose of music is the application of tension and release over thorough bass for the pleasure of God, something like that. It's in German. I don't know the direct translation. And then the last is squarely in our tradition, where you read Coltrane's Psalm on Love Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
And you read the liner notes, the note that he gave to the listener. And I feel like those are the kind of documents or the statements that I feel like capture that the best.
Yeah, beautiful. And we'll end with Wayne. The legacy. That sounds like a next record. The legacy of Wayne. I don't know. What do you want to? I
Wow,
mean, you already have a great legacy. What would you add to that legacy?
well, that's the thing. I hate going after everyone's such powerful responses. You know,
This
I'm
is
in a
your
very
story. It doesn't.
yeah, well, there you go. I'm you know, I feel like quite honestly, I'm at a very interesting point in my life. I realize that I do have a legacy. I realize that I have a legacy as an educator, and that in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, that's even become more prominent, and I accept that, and I'm proud of that. I realize that I probably am, you know, considered, you know, a very diligent, hard worker, you know, great musician, and all that. And I realize that, you know, my son considers me a great father, and all that. So I know that those things are in my legacy. But to be completely honest, I'm not. I don't. I feel like that there's something more that is supposed to be my legacy. Not that those aren't important and valid.
Yeah.
And I realize that, again, that I've made an impact and that I'm seen as those things, and I respect those things. But I do feel like that there's something more that needs to happen for me to say this is what I think that I was meant to do. And I'm at a strange place where I feel like I'm kind of half searching for it, half leading towards it. So the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful answer, because it reminds me, um, share another story of mine. I was on the road with the Dizzy Big Band, and I was talking with, not to name toss it anyway, I was talking with James Moody, and I was asking him questions about theory and music and his concept of playing. And quite simply put, to your point, when he was like, man, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. He was like, yeah, yeah, I'm moody. Yeah, I'm all those things, but I'm still, there's still more out there that I need to know, that I'm trying to search for, that I want to experience, that I want to grow into. And as what you're saying, as what Marcus said, Liani and Ricky, and to our viewers, let's, I think if we all, I'm gonna flip it again for a moment, in the perspective of the true meaning of art and the true meaning of being a creator and the creator's room. I think what resonated mostly for me tonight is a sense of ownership, a sense of pride, a sense of optimism, a sense of uncertainty, but I'm okay with that. And love and respect. And I think with that thought, we could all be, not that there's anything wrong with it. This could be a plumbers convention, a creators room of plumbers, and we emote that ideology. We could be carpenters. We could be whatever the case may be. And I think I'm proud to say that I know you all. I've in some way had some part of your evolution early in the game. And I'm still a part of your lives, even through this, our wonderful creator for the Creators Room, Danielle Waters. We thank you for creating a space for us to talk. We're going to invite you back. I don't know, we've been talking for an hour and a half at this point, and I don't know if the viewers have any further questions, but I feel like this is a good place for us to bring you back on. And
Yeah.
as my dad would say the prayer and benediction.
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody that joined tonight. It was a great conversation from, evolution from being a student to, your careers currently. And it was very inspiring to see, like, most of you had stage fright. I think that's something our current students always think about, not just the jazz students, but our theater and our hip hop students too. So it's great to see how you've evolved, how you stay in touch, how you network. That's another pillar for, the creators room is networking, and just being yourselves is very inspiring. I've gotten to see Ricky and Liani, in their element. And we still book Liani for Brick City Booking. So like, we still utilize you.
We got Ricky for something coming up as well. So
yeah, so it's
we
just
always
like we
call
still
Marcus.
utilize our students, our alum, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for all of you. And thank you for tonight. Today was, this is awesome. And this will also be on YouTube, so you can watch it back.
Great,
and just right quickly, remember, Wayne Escoffery has a European tour coming up. Check his website for all that information. Liani's on tour with Billy, Ella, and
Nina, right?
Nina. I probably said it wrong. I'm not sure. You can look her up. Ricky's got some things coming up. Carnegie Hall being one of them. Marcus, I didn't get to any upcoming events for you. You want to announce something that you're currently working on?
Sure.
You want us to know about?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is I'm also doing Carnegie Hall with John Baptiste. He recently wrote a symphony and invited me to play the bass saxophone in it. Besides that, I have a regular series online called How to Listen to Music, where we go through classic recordings of various genres and styles and just kind of parse and dissect them, understand what's going on. The goal is for people to have a better relationship to the music that they listen to. And I think
when is that? Where can we find information on that?
The next one is going to be on March 24th, and I will send out the link to Danielle and Renee so that you can cover that. We'll be talking about D'Angelo's Voodoo album.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And back to our sponsor, our
Yes.
founder.
All right, thank you so much. And I think this was awesome. Like I said earlier, I do want to again thank NJM Insurance for providing gender support to us and the creators room, and also shout out to Renee Velez Torres, who's been assisting throughout this whole process, and our audience, and also our future audience for this being on demand. So I'm very excited for more. We are going to be wrapping up the creators room for this year. Well, for a little bit. So the next one is June 8th, and then we'll be coming back in the fall. So this has been a great season, and thank you, and have a great night. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.